Sweeper 50, welcome back to tower. Expedite the runway. Report 1 off. Sweeper 50, welcome back to tower. Expedite the runway. Report 1 off. Sweeper 50, do you copy?
This is the absolute best first sergeant that I've ever dealt with in my 23 and a half years. That's okay. He knows it, I know it, you know it. Those that work with him, you know it. It's the best first sergeant that I've worked with in my career. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Master Sergeant Tom Felton.
By AFI, every EPR in my squadron, I have to review. Retiring as a senior master sergeant ain't so bad. I mean, you made it further than a lot of people. You're making that last one without a senior raider endorsement. Okay. They asked me to speak. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get you comfortable. Because I need you to turn around and look at me. So if your seats are facing that way, go ahead and spin them around. We got about an hour. But you know, you tell them what they want to hear. David Duncan calls and he says, hey, can you give me a 15-minute speech? Sure. I can do that. Now, listen, you're going to have to take the picture and go sit down. You ain't going to be crawling around on the floor. Don't take my seat, okay? Go ahead. You got enough pictures? Take my picture? Make sure you get my picture. Now, you got turned around so I can see you good. Now, I'm going to give you a warning first. I have ADD. That's an honest fact. I get distracted very easily. So if I catch you talking, I will stop. And I will bring the extra microphone over to you and let you speak. Now, try to talk to my wife during this. She knows. And I don't care who you are, really. Because you see, I am the only person in this room that it would benefit for me to get fired. Fire me. Send me to MOS. So, we're probably going to run a little bit later. I only got to speak once so far here at this hour. When I made chief, I sort of gave up speaking. I let other people speak, so a little bit nervous now, so I'm going to tell you a true story that happened, 2 true stories really. And like I said, in about an hour from now, we'll be through with this, and yard sales don't start until 7 o'clock in the morning. Don't be an early bird either. But I was at Whiteman Air Force Base, and like the senior master sergeant retired. Oh, you're not retired yet. You might as well be. What you're going to get from here on out is the cost of living pay grade. I leave Shinya Air Force Base. I am Snow One. They called me Snow One in my 7 dwarfs is what they call me. I go to the 509 medical group. Now this is when you put the diamond on as soon as they say, hey, you're going to be a first sergeant. I leave plowing snow, walk into the med group. Walk into the operating room lost, and they're thinking I'm walking around visiting them. Thought that it was awesome. And I've been there about a month. So, you know, like Bill said, it didn't really take that long for them to get to know me. Well, we had a visitor come. General Lowe, 4-star. You know how that is, Colonel. You know, people need stuck up with FaceTime. They need time with the general. And you know, I'm a brand new master sergeant, new first sergeant. I know it's going to take me 6 times to get promoted. I don't need any FaceTime with this guy. I've walked into a mess. I've got a lot of cleaning up to do. So they said, we want you to be the elevator boy. And then, you know, we only got 3 floors. I'm like, Colonel, come on. He said, yes, I want you in there for what you're doing for us and stuff. I said, okay. So, now this is a little small elevator, you know, and it was Wing Commander Colonel Marcotte was his name. Went on to be a 3-star. And it wasn't because of that elevator ride. And my colonel, Colonel Witts, was his name, but he got fired. He wasn't because of that elevator ride. You know, it was one of them old-timey elevators that had that red button that you pull out and push in to stop. And so when I got on that elevator, I said, I am just going to stand here and not say a word unless he talks to me. Well, if he talks to me, I've got something in store for him. So I'm standing there, you know, and the 2 colonels are trying to suck up, and I'm just listening, thinking, you know, all this stuff that I've got to get done in my office. And he was a big guy, too, but most people are. I mean, he was a big guy. And he looked down at me, and he said, son, where are you from? What? I didn't have to stop. Now, I'm up against the wall. Now, Colonel Marcotte and now my colonel wish they could have got to that button. And I said, sir, I'm from the Holy Land. And he looked at me and he said, you don't look like you're from the Holy Land. I said, well, do you remember the story in the Bible about Moses going up to the hilltop, but he struck the rock and he didn't speak to it, and he didn't get to go in? I said, have you stopped going to church? Now, I'm up in these, you know, I'm out this bed. The 2 colonels, like, get to the button, and I'm like, don't touch the button. Honest God's truth. I said, did your mama know you quit going to church since you came in? And he's, sure. I said, Moses was standing on Kentucky looking right into East Tennessee. That is the Holy Land. I see now. So I pulled the button out, went on up. I said, I got another story for you on the way back down. So I'm standing there with that elevator open for about 30 minutes, and I went looking for the general. And I found I said, where did the general go? They said he took the stairs. That's a true story there. From that day forward, Thomas Henry didn't have to worry about DBs. I wasn't allowed to be around them anyway. I guess David thinks my time's about up now. Once I got the green light to speak tonight, I went in and told my boss, and you need to write this down. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen H. Williams, born in rural Tennessee, downstream cousin. Look at him. Where's he at? Tell me he ain't got a Cabbage Patch head. Try to get that flat top going. Social Security number, 426. We need the identity theft back there. 9568, date of birth 29 August 1964. His home phone. Please do me a favor. Every one of us in this room would just call that ring one time. 222-7770. Very easy to remember. 770. She's saying, that is it! 222, just like Pizza Hut. 222-7770. Okay. So ladies, I guess I better start talking to you all. I want to tell you about a story and the reason why this emblem is on the back of your program. That emblem and the word expedite. You're the only reason that we got all dressed up tonight. I even took 2 showers today. Now, back in rural Tennessee, that's a waste of water. I mean, once a week is enough. But it is, like Sergeant Green said, it is hard to believe when you look at me and think that I've been in the Air Force 28 and a half years, as good looking as I am. Some of y'all been rode hard. Thailand is not that expensive. They do wonders over there, not too expensive, is it? But in 1991, I put on Master Sergeant, 1 April. They gave me a bottle of non-alcoholic, I don't know what, grape juice. Had a set of shoulder boards on it. Chief Adams going to work on getting them back when he becomes CCM, and said congratulations, and that was it. There was no week-long course. There was no seminars. There was no chiefs taking you down, explaining all this stuff to you. But one thing I did know was to go to a Chief Master Sergeant and say, how do I get to where you're at? Because when you talk about mentorship, you want to pick a person who is at a point in life that you want to be at sometime down the road. And I knew that 18-year staff sergeant wasn't where I wanted to be. So I sat down with those before they had all those chief notes coming out and these seminars and stuff, and sort of figured this thing out. Now, it took me quite a few times to make senior like it's going to take Sergeant Green to make chief. But after 6 times, I figured that test out too, sort of like in high school. You know, they'll float you through. So Max, I need you to stand up a second. I need to see where y'all are at. There's too many eyeballs looking at me. I can't see them. Now, I know there's more than that. Stand up. We ain't got all night. Well, I do. Like I said, your exam don't start until 7. All right. So I know where y'all are at. Stay standing just for a second. There's the 2 things that I want you to remember about tonight's speech. Perceptions are reality, whether they are true or not. Perceptions are reality, whether they're true or not. And the second thing is, it's your job to show them the lights. And all of this will make sense in about an hour and a half. You can sit down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the true story about my experience with the lights and the word expedite. And you need to go back with me 28 years to Rickenbacker Air Force Base at Columbus, Ohio, where I was a dirt boy. Dirt boy! Mess with the ball! Dirt boy! My job was the flight line sweeper. I was called Sweeper 50. And I've done this over and over. You know, the first time I went out there at the night time, I thought, this is neat. They got the Christmas lights out there. They had all them pretty blue lights, and nobody told me what the difference between them blue lights and them white lights meant. I found out in a hurry. There was a big difference. I had signed up for the Air Force the 10th of November, 1977. Supposed to come in under the buddy system. We drove 57 miles to work each day. Me and a guy named David Coley, called him Skinny. Every day we passed through what is called Malfunction Junction in East Tennessee. It was for 75, Interstate 75 tied in with Interstate 40. Every day we would pass by that Air Force recruiter station. And I said, Skinny, we need to stop and join the Air Force and get out of here. And he said, sounds great. I said, great. I'll go Thursday and sign up. But somehow I had passed the test good enough in high school to sign up. Well, Skinny failed. Well, Skinny says, okay, I signed up Thursday, and he said, the recruiter said, he'll come in Tuesday, but I'll just sign you up both the same day. He has to retake the test, though. He failed the test again. So that meant Tommy was by himself then. And I had to leave by myself, ride halfway to Texas. Had been treated special because I'd lost mom and dad when I was early. early in life, and I remember sitting next to this old guy, you know, and had that crying so much that you do. And he put his arm around me and he said, "Son, you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'll be fine." And I got off that bus, and I definitely remember them yellow footsteps. And if you can't understand my accent, I'll get somebody to interpret for you. But I remember that guy screaming at me, and there was 8 of us. And he said, "Boy, where are you from?" And I said, "Tennessee." And he said, "I tell you right now, you ain't gonna make it." I said, "Sir, if you'll let me get back on that bus, I'll never come back." And he had to turn around and walk away because he started laughing. Now, I want to tell you about my first boss at Rickenbacker Air Force Base. His name was Tech Sergeant Daniel L. Anderson. He was the meanest and most hatefulest person I'd ever met. That was my perception of him anyway. And let me read you a quote from Volume 2 of the PFE. "Regardless of how strongly leaders feel about themselves, it is the public's perception that counts and becomes reality." My perception of Tech Sergeant Daniel L. Anderson was he was the most meanest and hatefulest person, sort of like Jack. If you had the dude, and he had them sunglasses that the pilots wear, and he had the pencil-thin mustache. He had never yelled at me, cussed me out. I'd seen him in person yell and make people cry, just literally break them down. But never me. But that was my perception of him. Remember my first job as the sweeper, and my call sign was Sweeper 50. And many times I went out on the runway, and I knew by over and over, I would stop at the threshold lines and I would say Rickenbacker Tower. I wouldn't say it that fast. 28 years ago, we'd still be on the introduction. I only left Tennessee to go deer hunting in Alabama. And that's the way they're a little bit slower in their dialect down here than what we were. So, you know, here I am in Columbus, Ohio, talking to the control tower. They talked extremely fast to me. All I would do is stop at the threshold and I would say, Rickenbacker Tower, this is Sweeper 50, request permission onto the active runway to sweep. And I would just listen for the word proceed. That was the key word. Once I heard it, I couldn't understand it. So, one day, I'm out on the flight line, and this had never happened to me before. The only thing that I used to do was Sweeper 50, you know, I'd get out there and I'd sweep. They never would call me, and I knew when I left, I would say, Rickenbacker Tower, this is Sweeper 50, departed on guard. And life was good. I would read my CDCs out there. That's all I had to do was sweep. One day, while I was sweeping, came over the radio, Sweeper 50, Rickenbacker Tower. And I'm like, I pulled to the center of the runway. And I can tell you exactly, and I can't remember the actual date of the day, but it was probably in August, 28 years ago. And Chief K, this was when, you know, I was still close to the Lord and hadn't been out and done all the bad things that you do when you come in the military. So I stopped in the middle of that runway, and I prayed and I said, Lord, this is your little servant Tommy here in Yankee land. And I said, these people talk extremely fast. And I said, this guy on this radio is about to talk to me. And I need your wisdom to understand him. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you exactly what he said. He said, Sweeper 50, expedite the runway. said, Lord, I understood every word he said. The problem is, I don't have a clue what that word I didn't make 37 straight A's. My vocabulary didn't include expedite. So I'm thinking of a dike with an X. Now, I didn't see the KC-135 flying around. And so, I just went back to sweeping. And he kept saying that over and over. And he said, sweeper 50, expedite the runway. And I'm like, if he says it one more time, I'm going to turn it off. He said, sweeper 50, expedite the runway. And he's, he kept getting faster. But I can still understand it. I can't find that dike out here with no head. I remember looking down that runway and going down that runway looking for a dike. That's true now. You think it's funny. And I prayed, because when you got that feeling, I said, Lord, this is your servant again. And I said, I've got a feeling I should know what that word expedite means. And I said, I need you to send me a sign. And I'm driving along, and this is the old-timey sweepers. Now, probably none of you all saw this. It was a big yellow, how do you say yellow? This yellow had a big suction hood underneath and a big flashing light on top. And I looked to the left of me, and I said, Lord, it is the Antichrist right there next to me. It was Daniel L. Anderson. He was in a blue truck with a flashing yellow light on top, and he was shaking his fist at me. And when he looked at me, I'm telling you, he had 666 on his forehead. Fangs hanging out. Lord, me and you got to get out of here. So I knew, listen, I was fast growing up, and he was big and fat. And that was back when the older you were, the fatter you could be. I was still young, I was 19. I was a 4'6", 40, baby, and I did anything. So I knew if I could beat him to that snow barn, that I'd go in there and hide. So that old sweeper only went so fast, but I'm telling you, I was up on the dash, stone gas pedal. I beat him back there because he was messing with the tower. Because I didn't call the tower or anything, it was just to get out of there. And I remember stopping, and I ran in there, and we had parked all of our snow plows in that barn. And I crawled up into the back of one of them. And I remember laying in the back of that, and looking at the big hanger lights hanging down. And and then it wasn't too long I could hear him. And with his strong, hateful voice, he said, Tommy, get your little butt down here. And and it's like on them scary movies, but I wasn't making a sound, and snot and tears flowing. And I lay there in the back of that, and you know what was going through my mind, though? What was going through my mind was, I was going to be kicked out of the Air Force. And what was I going to tell my oldest brother? I used to call him an ex-Marine. And he said, Tommy, don't ever call me an ex-Marine. I'm always a Marine. Now, he was the one that raised me after my mom died when I was 14. So, losing Mom was a significant emotional event. And then getting a 24-year-old Marine fresh out of Vietnam to be your daddy. That was a significant emotional event. I was on probation at age 11. True. Going to cut a boy with a beer bottle. They're going to send me to reform school. And I was laying in the back of that snowplow thinking how disappointed he would be that I was going to be kicked out. Because you see, for me, ladies and gentlemen, the Air Force was the ticket out. That was my ticket out of the little hick town. Nothing wrong with it. Not that I wanted to be at the hosiery mill or the paper mill, but the Air Force was my ticket out. And you see, I knew that Tech Sergeant Daniel L. Anderson, the Antichrist, was hunting me. And I knew that if I just lay there, hopefully he wouldn't find me. And I had a Volkswagen, a slug bug. And I was thinking if I stayed there until the middle of the night, I would go and I would pack all my stuff up. And I would leave before they came to work and I would go back home. When Daniel quit searching for me, he probably got tired. And wasn't into PT a lot back then. And he sent my best friend, David S. Clark. And David come walking down that aisle of them snowplows and he said, "Tom, Tom!" And I wiped the snot and the tears away and I jumped down and I said, "He's after me." He says, "He wants to talk to you in the office." I said, "I ain't going by myself." He said, "I'll go with you." Well, we got in the office and I could hear it. I could hear John Wayne coming. And you know what David did? Well, there's only one door to get in. You know, and Sergeant Anderson feels most of it. So I thought, this is going to be like 33B in football. I'm going to have to blast through here. Now, remember, my perception of him was he was the most meanest and hatefulest person I'd ever met in my life. Never done anything to me personally, just that was my perception of him because of what he did to other people. And Sergeant Anderson came in, and I'm standing there, and again, I've got that going. So I'm standing there ready for him to come over and say, "I'm sorry, son. We're not going to need your services anymore." And he came over and he put his arm around me, and you know what he told me? He said, "Tom, you're my best airman. I count on you more than anybody in this shop. I never have to get on to you about your hair, never have to get on to you about being on time or doing your job. You're my best airman." And I'm sort of confused, you know, because I'm not running on the 486 here. It didn't sound like what it was supposed to. And so I figured he's trying to sucker me into going back out there. And I told him, I said, "I can't understand those people. They talk too fast, and I can't find that dike out there. They're telling me to find the expedite." And he said, "What if I can show you a way that you can still be the sweeper and not have to talk to the control tower? Would you do it?" I'm like, "How are we going to do this?" He took me over to base ops, and there was a buck sergeant sitting there. And he had his arm around me then, and he said, "This is Airman Pelfrey. He's my best airman." I'm like, "Get up on your feet." That's right. The best dirt boys in the house. Get up on your feet. He said, "Here's what I need from you. Tom cannot understand the control tower people because where he was raised. And whenever you hear Sweeper 50 ask for clearance onto the runway on the back of your program, on every single dash of a military vehicle, this label is on there. You show Airman Pelfrey the lights." And from that day on, when Sweeper 50 would say, "Rickenbacker Tower, this is Sweeper 50 on the Gulf Hammerhead, request permission to enter the active," they would show me the lights. And selects, I need you to stand up now, once again. And I know that most of you all are probably smart enough that you know what the word expedite means. So you don't have to go out and you show somebody this, because they can probably understand that. But what I mean by you showing them the lights, Select, is when we're getting ready to go TDY, that you whistle and call them all together and say, huddle up over here, boys and girls, because I've got something to tell you. While on my watch, while we're TDY, Teresa Hortez, it's your job to tell them married people are going to act like married people. And since Washington has confused us enough that we don't know what that is, if you won't do it in front of your wife or your husband, in Tennessee language, you ought not be doing it. That's what your job is, to show them the light. And I also mean about implementing a promotion system under your watch that gets to people to where you're at and above. The program that I have, 6 individuals signed up for staff sergeant, making that. If you score 75, I take you to lunch of your choosing. Sergeant Newford says, I got a gambling addiction. I call it an investment in future chiefs. I had an 83.33% promotion rate the other day. That's what I mean by you showing them the lights. I want you to look at them in the eyes and tell them you've got the answer for the DUIs, John Alsvig. That if you drink and drive in a 2-ton vehicle and you endanger the men and women and the children on this base, we don't have any room for you. We're going to cut 40,000. That's what I mean by you showing them the lights. And we won't have to spend so much time on trying to prevent DUIs. Gather all your males together and let them know that if they take advantage of a female that is intoxicated, that we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. That's what I mean by you showing them the lights. And the last thing is, just like Sergeant Anderson did to me one day, and Chiquita, my airman here from Props, you put your arm around her and you look at her and you say, Chiquita, you're my best airman. I count on you every single day, more than anybody else. You do that. That's what I mean by you showing them the lights. Please be seated. Every single government vehicle has this sticker. My last job was the OG First Sergeant at Columbus Air Force Base. I own the control tower. I'm sitting at the Gulf Hammerhead one day. I said, Columbus Tower, this is Diamond 1. Could you show me the lights, please? And I came up there and they said, Chief, why did you ask us to show you the lights? I said, that's a long story, but I'd be willing to tell you. It was an honor for me to speak to you tonight. It is my duty and your duty, Celeste, to show them the lights from here on out. Thank you.